Part 1. The crystal towers of Velcara Prime burned under a sky filled with enemy ships. Overseer Thane stumbled through the underground command bunker, his three-fingered hands shaking as alarms blared throughout the facility. Around him, his fellow Velcari rushed back and forth in panic, their usually calm blue skin now flushed with fear. The Krell had come without warning. Their massive swarm fleet had emerged from hyperspace just 2 days ago, and since then, the proud Velcari civilization had been pushed to the edge of extinction. 3,000 enemy warships now surrounded their homeworld, raining destruction on the cities below. The Velcari defense fleet, designed more for ceremony than actual combat, had been swept aside in the first few hours. Thane reached the communication center and grabbed the emergency beacon with desperate hands. His people had lived in peace for 3,000 years. They had built beautiful cities, created magnificent art, and spread their culture across 12 star systems. But they had forgotten how to fight. They had assumed the galaxy was a safe place where civilized beings resolved conflicts through dialogue and trade. The Krell had taught them otherwise. The insect-like aliens did not negotiate. They did not trade. They simply consumed everything in their path, and right now, they wanted Velcara Prime. Defense Coordinator Vesha appeared beside Thane, her face streaked with dust from a collapsed ceiling. The planetary shields are failing. We have maybe 12 hours before they break through. After that, the cities will be defenseless. Thane nodded grimly and activated the beacon. His voice cracked as he began the transmission that would be broadcast across dozens of star systems. This is Overseer Thane of Velcara Prime. We are under attack by the Krell swarm. Our defenses have failed. Our people face extinction. We are calling for help from any military force within range. We offer any price, any resources, any technology in exchange for immediate assistance. Please, if anyone can hear this, we are dying. The message went out into the void. Thane slumped in his chair and waited. Vesha placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, but neither of them spoke. What was there to say? They both knew the reality of galactic politics. The Krell were too dangerous. No one would risk their own fleets to save the Velcari. Hours passed. A few responses came in, but they were all the same. Sympathetic words, promises of thoughts and prayers, but no actual help. The Threxian Empire said their fleet was engaged elsewhere. The Korthan Federation claimed the distance was too great. The Galactic Council sent a formal message condemning the Krell attack and promising to hold an emergency session to discuss sanctions, as if the Krell cared about sanctions while they destroyed cities and killed millions. Thane was about to shut off the communication console when a new message arrived. The signal was strong, which meant the sender was relatively close. He accepted the transmission, and a face appeared on the screen that Thane had never seen before. The being looked strange. It had only 2 eyes instead of 3, and its skin was a pale tan color rather than blue. Hair covered the top of its head, cut short in a military style. But what struck Thane most was the expression on the creature's face. There was no fear there, no hesitation, just calm, determined confidence. Velcara Prime, this is Commander Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. Help is on the way. Hold your positions for 3 more days. Humanity is coming. Thane blinked in confusion. Humanity, Terran? I do not know your species, Commander. What kind of force are you bringing? Morrison smiled slightly. We're bringing enough. Just stay alive for 3 days. We'll handle the rest. Morrison out, the transmission ended. Thane immediately pulled up the galactic database and searched for information about humans. What he found did not inspire confidence. The humans were a young species, barely 200 years old in terms of galactic age. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. Their home system, Sol, was in a distant arm of the galaxy that most civilized species considered backwater territory. They are practically primitives, Vesha said, reading over his shoulder. What can they possibly do against 3,000 Krell warships? Thane had no answer. But desperate people could not afford to be picky. He ordered the military to prepare for a possible human arrival in 3 days and prayed that these mysterious Terrans were more capable than they appeared on paper. The next 3 days were the longest of Thane's life. The Krell continued their assault, grinding down the planetary shields bit by bit. The death toll climbed into the millions. Velcari cities that had stood for thousands of years were reduced to rubble. Refugee camps overflowed with homeless families, and the hospitals could not keep up with the wounded. On the 3rd day, Just as Morrison had promised, the human fleet arrived. Thane watched the sensor screens as 47 ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. His heart sank. 47 ships against 3,000. It was suicide. He opened a channel to the human commander. "Commander Morrison, we are grateful for your response, but your fleet seems very small. The Krell have more than 3,000 vessels. You are outnumbered over 60 to 1. Perhaps you should withdraw while you still can. There is no shame in retreating from impossible odds." Morrison's face appeared on the screen again, and this time Thane definitely saw amusement in the human's expression. That made no sense. Why would anyone be amused when facing certain death? "Overseer Thane," Morrison said calmly, "I appreciate your concern, but you need to understand something about humans. We come from a death world. Do you know what that means?" Thane searched his memory. Deathworld was a classification for planets that were extremely hostile to life. High gravity, dangerous predators, violent weather, deadly diseases. Most intelligent species evolved on peaceful garden worlds where survival was relatively easy. Deathworlds were rare, and species that evolved on them were even rarer. Earth is a Class 12 deathworld, Morrison continued. Everything on our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. Predators, diseases, other humans, even the weather. We became the dominant species not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we refused to give up. We learned to adapt, to fight, to survive against impossible odds. 60 to 1? We have faced worse than one. So thank you for the warning, but we did not come here to retreat. We came here to win. The channel closed. Thane stared at the screen in shock. He looked at Vesha, who seemed equally stunned. "Did he just say they evolved on a Class 12 death world?" Vesha whispered. "I thought those planets could not support intelligent life." "Apparently they can," Thane replied slowly. "And apparently it creates a very different kind of intelligent life." They both turned back to the tactical display. The human fleet was moving now, accelerating toward the Krell armada at speeds that seemed reckless. They were not spreading out defensively or trying to flank the enemy. They were just charging straight forward like ancient warriors on a battlefield. Thane realized he had made a terrible mistake. He had called for help without understanding what kind of help would answer. The humans were not like other galactic species. They were predators from a world that had tried to kill them every single day. And now he had brought them here. Part of him felt relief, but another part felt a growing sense of dread. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you asked Deathworlders for help. The battle was about to begin. Part 2 Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Phoenix Dawn and watched the tactical display with calm focus. She had trained for this moment her entire adult life. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic here, no fear. Just professionals doing their job. Captain Greg Palmer stood beside her, arms crossed as he studied the Krell formation. The enemy ships filled the display like a swarm of angry insects, which was not far from the truth. The Krell were insect-like creatures that operated with a hive mind, making them predictable but numerous. "All ships report ready for combat," Lisa announced. "The Krell have not changed their formation. They are maintaining their siege pattern around Velcara Prime." Greg nodded. "They probably think we are not a threat." 47 ships against 3,000. By conventional galactic warfare standards, we should be running away right now. "Good thing we do not follow conventional standards," Lisa replied with a slight smile. The human fleet was arranged in a formation that would have confused most galactic military commanders. Instead of spreading out to cover more space, the ships were clustered in tight attack groups. It looked defensive, almost frightened. But Lisa knew the truth. They were not clustering for defense. They were clustering to concentrate their firepower. "Send to all ships," Greg ordered. "Remember your training. Remember Earth. Every species in this galaxy thinks humans are weak because we show emotion. They think we are too soft, too caring, too gentle to be effective warriors. Let's prove them wrong." Across the fleet, thousands of men and women prepared for battle. They checked weapons, reviewed targeting data, and made final adjustments to their systems. These were not the peaceful explorers who had first left Earth decades ago. These were the descendants of soldiers, fighters, and survivors. They carried in their genes the legacy of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a planet that fought them every step of the way. "Krell vessels are adjusting formation," Lisa reported. "They have detected us. I am reading a mass launch of fighter craft. Estimate 40,000 small craft incoming, 40,000 fighters. Against the human fleet's 600. The numbers were absurd. Any sane commander would order a retreat, but Greg Palmer just smiled. Launch all fighters, he commanded, and turn on the music. Lisa pressed the button that activated one of humanity's strangest battle traditions. As the fighter craft launched from their carriers, speakers inside each cockpit began playing music. Old war songs from Earth, rock and roll, heavy metal, anything with a strong beat and aggressive energy. The Velkari, monitoring the communications channels, were completely confused. Why were the humans playing noise before a battle? It made no tactical sense, but the humans knew better. The music was not for tactics. It was for morale. It was to remind each pilot that they were part of something bigger, to get their blood pumping, to awaken the ancient fighting instincts that had kept humanity alive for millions of years. Lieutenant Danny Carter sat in the cockpit of his fighter, feeling the music pulse through his body. His neural implants connected him directly to his ship's systems, allowing him to react faster than any unmodified pilot in the galaxy. Beside him, his wingman Maria Santos performed a system check. All green, Maria reported over the comm. Ready to go hunting? Danny grinned. Hunting. That was the right word. The Krell thought they were the predators here, but they were about to learn a hard lesson. Humans had been hunting since before they could speak. It was in their blood, their bones, their very souls. The human fighter wing streaked toward the incoming Krell swarm. The aliens flew in perfect formation, every ship moving in sync with the others. It was beautiful in a way, like watching a flock of birds, but it was also their weakness. They fly like a computer program, Danny observed. Same patterns, same responses. They are predictable. That is what happens with a hive mind, Maria replied. They are strong together but cannot think as individuals. Makes them easy to outsmart. The two forces collided in a storm of weapons fire and explosions. The Krell had numbers, but the humans had something the insects could never match. They had imagination. They had creativity. They had millions of years of evolution as predators who learned to think 3 steps ahead of their prey. Danny twisted his fighter through a series of maneuvers that would have torn apart a normal ship. His implants processed information faster than any biological brain alone could manage. He saw a gap in the Krell formation and dove through it, his guns blazing. 3 enemy fighters exploded before they even knew he was there. A group of Krell ships turned to pursue him, but Maria was already there. Her missiles caught them from the side, and the alien craft disintegrated in balls of fire. Too easy, Maria commented. They are not even trying to dodge, because they cannot, Danny explained. The hive mind tells them what to do. They cannot make independent decisions fast enough. We have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to be unpredictable. All across the battle space, the same scene repeated itself. Human pilots danced through the Krell formations, striking and vanishing, attacking from unexpected angles, using tactics that the hive mind could not anticipate. The aliens tried to swarm individual fighters, but the humans worked in pairs and groups, covering each other, adapting to every situation. On the Phoenix Dawn, Lisa watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Enemy fighters are down to 32,000. We have lost only 4 craft. Good, Greg said. Order the fighters to clear a path. It is time for the big ships to join the party. The human capital ships began their advance. They accelerated toward the Krell fleet, their engines burning at maximum power. The aliens finally seemed to realize they were facing a serious threat and began to reposition their forces. But they were too slow. The humans had already analyzed their formation, identified their weaknesses, and planned their attack. This was what humanity did best. They adapted. They learned. They overcame. All ships, Greg broadcasted to the fleet. Prepare to engage at close range. Show them what real firepower looks like. The Phoenix Dawn's railguns came online. These weapons did not use lasers or plasma. They used simple physics. They accelerated chunks of metal to incredible speeds and threw them at the enemy. The kinetic energy was devastating. The first salvo from the human fleet tore through the Krell lines like a knife through paper. Ships that had seemed so threatening moments ago simply ceased to exist, torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. The Krell tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for the conventional warfare that the rest of the galaxy practiced. Energy beams that human shields could absorb. Missiles that human point defense systems could shoot down. They had evolved to fight prey, not predators. Target their command ships, Greg ordered. If they operate on a hive mind, they need relay vessels. Let's cut off their head. The Phoenix Dawn pivoted with surprising grace for such a large ship. Its main gun, a massive magnetic accelerator that ran nearly the entire length of the vessel, charged up. The air on the bridge seemed to vibrate with contained energy. Main gun ready, Lisa reported. Fire, Greg commanded. The ship shuddered as the weapon discharged. A projectile the size of a small vehicle crossed the distance to the Krell command ship in seconds. The impact was spectacular. The alien vessel simply exploded, taking dozens of nearby ships with it in an expanding cloud of debris and fire. Confirmed kill on primary target, Lisa announced. Enemy formation is losing cohesion. Multiple Krell ships are showing erratic behavior. Press the attack, Greg ordered. All ships advance. Let's finish this. The human fleet pushed forward into the chaos they had created. The Krell were trying to reorganize, but without their command structure, the hive mind was fracturing. Ships moved randomly, unable to coordinate their actions. In the fighter squadrons, Danny and Maria exploited the confusion. They darted through the disorganized Krell formation, destroying ship after ship. It was almost too easy now. The aliens were helpless without their central coordination. Starting to feel bad for them, Danny muttered as he destroyed his 25th kill of the battle. Do not, Maria replied sharply. They came here to wipe out an entire civilization. They deserve everything they get. She was right, of course. The Krell had started this fight. Humanity was just finishing it. On Velkara Prime, Overseer Thane watched the battle unfold with growing disbelief. In just 3 hours, the humans had destroyed over 1,000 Krell ships while losing only 4 of their own. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration of overwhelming superiority. How is this possible? Besha whispered beside him. The humans are so few. Thane shook his head slowly. He was beginning to understand. The humans were not winning because of numbers. They were winning because they were better at war than any species the galaxy had seen in centuries. They fought with a combination of technology, tactics, and sheer aggressive determination that the civilized galaxy had forgotten was possible. The Velkari had called for help. They had gotten it. But Thane was starting to wonder if they had opened a door that could never be closed again. Part 3, the Krell fleet was breaking apart. What had been an organized siege just hours ago was now a chaotic mess of damaged ships trying desperately to reorganize. Commander Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the enemy struggled to adapt to an opponent they had never imagined facing. Status report, Morrison ordered. Lieutenant Kevin Brooks looked up from his tactical station. Enemy casualties at 1,500 ships destroyed, 300 disabled. Our losses remain at 4 ships damaged, none destroyed. The Krell are attempting to form a defensive formation around their remaining command vessels. They learn fast, Morrison observed, but not fast enough. Prepare missile spread, all tubes. Target their command cluster. The Defiant was humanity's newest battleship, built specifically for deep space combat. Its armor could withstand pressures that would crush ships from more peaceful worlds. Its weapons were designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. And that experience showed. Missiles ready, Brooks reported. Fire. Hundreds of missiles erupted from the Defiant's launch tubes. But these were not simple explosives. Humanity had gotten very creative with its weapons over the centuries. Some missiles carried electromagnetic pulse warheads that would fry electronic systems. Others had cluster munitions that spread thousands of smaller projectiles. Still others carried plasma charges hot enough to melt through any known material. The missiles streaked across space toward the Krell command cluster. The aliens tried to shoot them down, but human missiles were designed to be difficult targets. They jinked and weaved, used decoys, and moved faster than the Krell targeting systems could track. The first wave hit the Krell formation like a hammer. Ships disappeared in bursts of light and energy. The electromagnetic pulse missiles shut down entire sections of the enemy fleet, leaving them floating helplessly. The cluster munitions shredded lighter vessels, while the plasma charges burned through the armor of the heavier ships. Target eliminated, Brooks announced. Enemy fleet cohesion has collapsed. They are scattering, Morrison nodded with satisfaction. This was the critical moment in any battle. The enemy had 2 choices now. They could try to regroup and continue fighting, or they could run. The Krell, despite their reputation for mindless aggression, were not stupid. They chose to run. Enemy vessels are breaking off and heading for the outer system, Brooks reported. It looks like they are trying to reach the hyperspace jump point. Morrison considered for a moment. The mission was to defend Velkara Prime, and that mission was accomplished. The Krell were retreating. By the rules of civilized warfare that governed most of the galaxy, this was the point where you let the enemy go. You had won. There was no need for further violence. But Morrison was not interested in civilized warfare. He was interested in making sure the Krell never came back. All ships, he broadcast to the fleet. Pursue and destroy. I want every Krell vessel in this system eliminated. Show no mercy. On Velkara Prime, Overseer Thane was monitoring the communications. He heard Morrison's order and felt a chill run through his body. Commander Morrison, he transmitted urgently. The Krell are retreating. You have won. There is no need for further bloodshed. Morrison's face appeared on the screen and his expression was cold. With respect, Overseer, you do not understand the situation. If we let these Krell go home, they will just come back with more ships. Or they will attack another world. The only way to truly win is to make sure they never want to try this again. But they are running away. Thane protested. Attacking a retreating enemy is considered dishonorable in galactic law. I do not care about galactic law, Morrison replied bluntly. I care about protecting innocent people. If that means chasing down every last Krell ship in this system, then that is what we will do. Morrison out. The channel closed. Thane looked at Vesha in shock. They are going to hunt them down. All of them. Should we try to stop them? Vesha asked uncertainly. Thane thought about it. Should they? The humans had saved their world. They had done what no other species was willing to do. And now they were making sure the Krell would think twice before attacking anyone else. Was that really something to oppose? No, Thane said finally. Let the humans do what they think is necessary. We called for help. This is what help looks like. The human fleet split into 3 groups, each moving to intercept different sections of the fleeing Krell armada. They moved with practiced coordination, like wolves hunting prey, because that was exactly what they were doing. Captain Greg Palmer led one battle group aboard the Phoenix Dawn. His ships moved to cut off the largest group of Krell vessels, about 800 ships trying to escape together. They think there is safety in numbers, Lisa Hayes observed. Then let's educate them, Greg replied. All ships attack Formation Delta. Hit them from 3 sides simultaneously. The human ships split into 3 smaller groups and accelerated hard. The Krell saw them coming and tried to prepare a defense, but they were disorganized and demoralized. Half their fleet was gone, their command structure was shattered, and they were facing an enemy that seemed utterly unstoppable. The Phoenix Dawn's railgun spoke first, sending projectiles into the Krell formation at a significant fraction of light speed. Each impact destroyed or crippled a ship. The aliens tried to return fire, but their weapons could barely scratch the human armor. Target their engines, Lisa ordered. I want some of these ships intact. We need prisoners. Why not just destroy everything? Asked a young officer at a nearby station. Lisa turned to him. Because humans do not just win battles. We learn from them. We will capture their officers, study their technology, find out everything we can about them. That information might save lives in the future. That is how we survived on Earth. And that is how we will survive out here. The Phoenix Dawn's targeting systems shifted focus. Instead of killing shots, they aimed for engine sections and command centers. The goal was to cripple, not destroy. Within an hour, 50 Krell ships were floating dead in space, their crews trapped inside. Dispatch boarding teams, Greg ordered. I want every data core and every surviving officer brought in for questioning. The other human battle groups were equally efficient. Commander Morrison led his group in a running battle with the Krell rear guard, systematically destroying every ship that tried to make a stand. The third group, led by Captain Amy Foster, pursued the fastest Krell ships toward the hyperspace limit. They are almost at jump range, reported Foster's tactical officer. Not good enough, Foster replied. Launch long-range missiles. I do not want a single one of those ships escaping. The missiles launched and accelerated to incredible speeds. The Krell ships at the front of their formation were just beginning to enter hyperspace when the missiles caught up with them. The explosions tore apart ships that thought they were moments from safety. Confirmed kills on all primary targets, the tactical officer reported. Remaining enemy vessels are changing course. They cannot reach the jump point. Good, Foster said. Close in and finish them. Within 6 hours of starting their pursuit, the human fleet had completed its mission. Of the 3,000 Krell ships that had attacked Velkara Prime, fewer than 200 escaped into hyperspace. The rest were destroyed, captured, or disabled. The wreckage floating throughout the system would serve as a monument to what happened when you attacked a world under human protection. Morrison gathered his commanders for a virtual meeting once the battle was complete. Greg Palmer, Amy Foster, and a dozen other captains appeared on screens around the Defiance conference room. "Excellent work, everyone," Morrison said. "Casualty report?" "4 ships damaged, none destroyed," Palmer reported. "Personnel casualties at 38 wounded, 3 dead. Enemy casualties estimated at over 200,000. The numbers were staggering. The humans had killed 200,000 Krell while losing only 3 of their own people. It was not a battle. It was not even a massacre. It was an extermination. "I want a complete after-action report from every ship," Morrison continued. "What worked, what did not work, what we can improve. This was our first major fleet engagement against a real threat, and I want to learn from it." "Should we be concerned about galactic reaction?" Foster asked. "We just violated about a dozen treaties and conventions." Morrison smiled grimly. "Let them complain. We are not part of their treaties. We are not bound by their rules. We came here to do a job, and we did it. If the galaxy has a problem with our methods, they can come tell us in person." The meeting ended, and Morrison turned to his communication officer. "Get me the Velkari overseer. It is time we had a conversation about what happens next." When Thane's face appeared on the screen, Morrison could see the fear and confusion there. The Velkari had gotten exactly what they asked for, and now they were terrified of it. "Overseer," Morrison began, "the Krell threat to your world has been eliminated. We will remain in orbit for another week to ensure no further attacks occur. After that, we will return to our territory." "Thank you, Commander," Thane said carefully. "Your actions today saved my people. We are grateful. But I must ask, was it necessary to pursue them so aggressively? To destroy so many fleeing ships?" Morrison's expression hardened. "Yes, it was necessary. Those ships would have gone home." Part 4. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Velkara Prime. The human fleet still orbited the planet, helping to repair damaged infrastructure and establish defensive systems that would protect the Velkari in the future. But today something new was happening. A ship had arrived bearing the symbol of the Galactic Council, Overseer. Thane stood in the rebuilt council chambers and watched as the council's representative materialized through the holographic projector. Ambassador Kreth was a tall being made of what looked like living crystal. His species, the Valorians, were one of the founding members of the Galactic Council and considered themselves the most civilized species in the galaxy. Beside Thane stood Commander Morrison and Captain Palmer. The humans had dressed in their formal military uniforms, dark blue with silver trim. They looked professional and disciplined, but Thane could sense the tension in the air. This meeting was not going to be friendly. "Overseer Thane," Kreth began, his voice chiming like bells. "The Galactic Council extends its congratulations on your survival. We are pleased that the Krell threat has been resolved." "Thank you, Ambassador," Thane replied carefully. "We owe our survival to the humans. They came when no one else would." Kreth's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with disapproval. "Yes, about that. The Council has reviewed the battle recordings and is deeply concerned about humanity's methods. The level of violence displayed, the pursuit of retreating forces, and the complete disregard for established rules of warfare are extremely troubling." Morrison stepped forward. "Ambassador, the Velkari sent a distress call." We responded. "We stopped the Krell. That was the mission, and we completed it successfully." "At what cost?" Kreth demanded. "You killed over 200,000 Krell. You pursued fleeing ships and destroyed them without mercy. You captured prisoners for interrogation. These actions violate the Galactic Convention on Military Conduct, the Treaty of Civilized Warfare, and at least 6 other protocols that have governed conflicts in this region for thousands of years. Protocols that left the Velkari to die," Palmer interjected sharply. "Where was the Galactic Council fleet when the Krell attacked? Where were all these civilized species when an entire world was crying for help?" Kreth's form flickered. The Council was preparing a diplomatic response. These matters take time. Rushing into military action without proper consideration can lead to escalation and greater conflict. "You mean you were doing nothing?" Morrison said flatly. "You were having meetings and writing reports while people died. That is not civilization, Ambassador. That is cowardice hiding behind bureaucracy. The chamber fell silent. Thane felt his breathing stop. No one spoke to the Galactic Council that way. The Council represented 73 species and controlled most of civilized space. They had the power to blockade systems, impose sanctions, even authorize military action against rogue elements. But Morrison showed no fear. He met Kreth's gaze without flinching. "Commander Morrison," Kreth said slowly, "you must understand that humanity is new to galactic affairs. You have only been spacefaring for 60 cycles. You do not understand the delicate balance that maintains peace in this region. Your aggressive nature, your competitive instincts, your predatory mindset make you dangerous to that peace." "Good," Morrison replied. "I hope we are dangerous. I hope every aggressive species in this galaxy hears what happened here and thinks twice before attacking innocent people. That is the whole point." "This is exactly the attitude we feared," Kreth insisted. "Humanity's refusal to follow established norms will lead to chaos. You cannot simply ignore thousands of years of diplomatic and military tradition." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes, who had been standing quietly behind Morrison, stepped forward. She held a data pad in her hands. "Ambassador, may I share something?" Kreth looked annoyed but nodded. "Proceed." Lisa activated the pad and a holographic display appeared showing graphs and statistics. "We spent the last 3 weeks analyzing galactic military data that is publicly available. In the past century, over 600 worlds sent distress calls to the Galactic Council. Of those, only 43 received military assistance. That is barely 7%. The rest were either ignored, told to wait for diplomatic solutions, or simply left to their fate." She changed the display to show specific examples. The Threxian colony world of New Hope was attacked by pirates 5 years ago. The Council promised help. It arrived 4 months later, after the colony had been destroyed and the population enslaved. The Corthan mining station at Beta Ceti called for assistance when bandits attacked. The Council sent a diplomatic mission. The station was looted and abandoned before the diplomats arrived. Lisa looked directly at Kreth. "Your civilization does not maintain peace, Ambassador. You maintain the appearance of peace by only getting involved in conflicts you know you can win easily. You let the weak die because protecting them is too hard or too dangerous. That is not civilization. That is survival of the fittest dressed up in fancy words." Kreth seemed unable to respond. His crystalline form dimmed slightly, which Thane had learned meant the Valorian was experiencing strong emotion. Morrison moved to stand beside Lisa. "The Council can debate our methods all it wants. But here are the facts. We responded to a distress call. We saved an entire civilization from extinction. We eliminated a threat that was terrorizing this region. And we did it in less than a week while your council was still scheduling meetings. If that makes us dangerous in your eyes, then fine, be afraid. But do not pretend your way is better when it leaves people to die. The council cannot allow a rogue military force to operate without oversight." Kreth stated firmly. "Humanity must agree to abide by council regulations if you wish to travel in civilized space. Otherwise you will be deemed a threat and treated accordingly." "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" Palmer asked quietly. "It is a statement of fact," Kreth replied. "The Council has the authority to impose blockades, sanctions, and, if necessary, military action against species that threaten galactic stability." Morrison smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Let me make something equally clear, Ambassador. Humanity did not ask for permission to defend the Velkari, and we will not ask for permission to defend ourselves or our allies in the future. We come from a death world where everything tried to kill us for millions of years. We survived by being tougher, smarter, and more stubborn than anything else. We are not impressed by threats from a council that hides behind rules while innocent people die. You cannot simply ignore the galactic community," Kreth protested. "Watch us," Morrison replied. "We are not asking to join your council. We are not asking for your approval. We are informing you that humanity will respond to distress calls from anyone who asks for help. We will use whatever methods we deem necessary. And if the council has a problem with that, you are welcome to try and stop us. But I suggest you think very carefully about whether you really want to fight a species that just destroyed a Krell armada 70 times our size." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Thane watched the exchange with growing understanding. The humans were not threatening the council, not exactly. They were simply stating what they would do and daring the council to oppose them. It was bold, possibly reckless, but also strangely compelling. Finally, Kreth spoke again, his voice quieter. The Council will need time to deliberate on this matter. But know that your actions today have consequences, Commander Morrison. I am counting on it, Morrison replied. In fact, I hope word spreads across the entire galaxy. I want every aggressive species out there to know that there is a new player in the game, and we do not lose. I want them to think twice before attacking peaceful worlds. I want them to wonder if humanity might show up to stop them. Fear is a powerful deterrent, Ambassador. Your council should try using it sometime. Kreth's hologram flickered and disappeared. The ambassador had ended the communication abruptly, clearly unable to continue the conversation. Thane let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. You just made a very powerful enemy, Thane said quietly to Morrison. Maybe, Morrison acknowledged, but we also sent a message. Humanity is here, we are not going away, and we will protect those who need protection. If the Council wants to oppose that, they can try. But I do not think they will. Why not? Thane asked. Morrison smiled. Because deep down they know we are right. Their system does not work. It leaves too many people vulnerable. They just do not want to admit it, because that would mean admitting they have failed. But now there is an alternative. Species who need real protection can call humanity instead of the Council, and that terrifies them more than our weapons ever could. Captain Palmer turned to Thane. Overseer, I want to propose something. We would like to establish a permanent defense station in orbit around your world. Nothing large, just a small facility with a few ships. That way, if the Krell or anyone else tries to attack again, we will be here immediately. Thane considered the offer carefully. Having human protection would make Velcara Prime one of the safest worlds in the sector, but it would also mean aligning with humanity over the Galactic Council. That would have political consequences. But then Thane thought about the millions of his people who were alive only because the humans had come. He thought about the three. Part 5-6 months had passed since the battle at Velcara Prime, and the galaxy was changing in ways no one had predicted. In a secure conference room on Earth, Fleet Admiral Christine Murphy reviewed the latest intelligence reports with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. 3 more requests for assistance came in this week, reported Colonel Frank Harris, head of Terran Defense Intelligence. The Mexari Republic is facing pirate raids on their outer colonies. The Plenari Confederacy is worried about territorial disputes with their neighbors, and the Sulcan Unity just asked if we would be interested in a mutual defense treaty. Christine leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temples. When humanity had answered the Velcari distress call, it had been a simple decision. People needed help and Earth could provide it. But now, 6 months later, humanity was becoming the unofficial military force for dozens of species who had lost faith in the Galactic Council. What is our current deployment status? Christine asked. We have the defense station at Velcara Prime with 6 ships, Harris replied. Another battle group is en route to assist the Mexari. We have diplomatic teams negotiating with 4 other species, and we are building 2 new shipyards to handle the increased demand for vessels. Christine shook her head in amazement. 60 years ago, humanity had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Now they were becoming a major military power in the galaxy. It was happening faster than anyone had planned. What is the Galactic Council doing? She asked. Harris smiled slightly. Panicking, mostly. Ambassador Kreth has been calling emergency sessions every other week. They are trying to pass resolutions condemning our actions, but they cannot get enough votes. Too many species are quietly glad that someone is finally standing up to aggressive empires. And the Krell? Silent. They have not launched a single raid since Velcara Prime. Our intelligence suggests they are terrified of encountering our ships again. Some of their survivors apparently spread stories about humans being unkillable demons from a nightmare world. Christine allowed herself a small smile. Good. Let them be afraid. Fear would keep them from attacking innocent people. There was a knock on the door and Captain Greg Palmer entered. He had returned from Velcara Prime 2 weeks ago and was scheduled to take command of a new carrier group. Admiral, Greg said, saluting crisply. You wanted to see me? At ease, Captain. Have a seat. Christine waited for him to sit before continuing. I have been reading your after-action reports from Velcara Prime, very thorough, but I want to hear your personal assessment. Do you think we did the right thing? Greg did not hesitate. Yes, ma'am. Those people were going to die. We saved them. Everything else is just politics. It is not that simple anymore, Christine replied. We have become something we never intended to be. We are becoming the military arm of the galaxy. Species are calling us instead of the Council. We are taking on responsibilities that we might not be able to sustain long term. With respect, Admiral, I disagree, Greg said firmly. We are not taking on responsibilities. We are doing what any decent civilization should do, which is help those who need it. The fact that everyone else has forgotten how to do that is not our problem. Christine studied him for a moment. Greg Palmer was a good officer, maybe one of the best. But he was also young and idealistic. He believed humanity could save everyone. Christine had been in the military longer and knew the reality was more complicated. What happens when we cannot save everyone? Christine asked quietly. What happens when we lose a battle? When human ships get destroyed and thousands of our people die? How will Earth react when the costs start mounting? The same way we always have, Greg replied. We will mourn our dead, learn from our mistakes, and keep fighting. That is what humans do, Admiral. We do not quit just because things get hard. Before Christine could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. Harris immediately pulled up a display showing incoming priority messages. Admiral, we are receiving a distress call, Harris reported urgently. It is coming from the Torvin system. They are under attack by an unknown force. Multiple casualties reported. They are requesting immediate assistance. Christine stood and moved to look at the display. The Torvin were a peaceful species of aquatic beings. Their system was over 2 weeks away at maximum speed. Do we have any ships in that sector? She asked. Negative. The closest battle group is the one heading to assist the Mekshari, but they would need to divert and would still arrive too late. Christine felt frustration rise in her chest. This was exactly what she had been worried about. Humanity could not be everywhere at once. They could not save everyone. Send a response, she said quietly. Tell them we are sorry, but we have no forces available to assist in time. Recommend they contact the Galactic Council. Harris hesitated. Admiral, the Galactic Council did not help the Velkari. The Torvin know this. That is why they called us. I know, Christine said, and her voice was heavy with the weight of command. But we do not have a choice. We cannot help them. Send the message. Greg stood abruptly. Admiral, request permission to speak freely. Granted, this is wrong. Those people need help. And we are saying no because it is inconvenient. How are we different from the Council if we do the same thing they did? Christine turned to face him and her expression was hard. We are different because we do not have unlimited resources, Captain. We have 47 ships total. 47. The Galactic Council has thousands. We are stretched thin trying to protect the commitments we have already made. If we keep saying yes to every request, we will spread ourselves so thin that we will not be able to help anyone effectively. So we let the Torvin die? Greg demanded. Yes, Christine said bluntly. We let the Torvin die because we cannot save everyone. That is the reality of command, Captain. Sometimes you have to make choices that keep you awake at night. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the few to save the many. If you cannot accept that, you should not be wearing this uniform. Greg looked like he wanted to argue further, but he controlled himself. Permission to return to my duties, Admiral? Granted, dismissed. Greg left, his back rigid with suppressed anger. Harris waited until the door closed before speaking. He is young. He will understand eventually. Maybe, Christine said quietly. Or maybe he is right and I am just making excuses. Either way, we have to live with our decisions. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation at Torvin played out exactly as predicted. The unknown attackers destroyed 3 orbital stations and bombarded 2 major cities before withdrawing. The Galactic Council sent a diplomatic mission to investigate and promised sanctions against whoever was responsible. The Torvin death toll reached 3 million. The news spread across the galaxy quickly. Humanity, the species that had saved Velkara Prime so dramatically, had refused to help the Torvin. Some species understood. Others began to question whether humans were really any different from the Council they criticized. In his quarters on the carrier Valiant, Greg Palmer stared at news reports showing the destruction on Torvin. 3 million dead. 3 million people who might still be alive if humanity had responded. He understood the Admiral's reasoning about limited resources, but understanding did not make it feel any better. There was a knock on his door. Come in. Lisa Hayes entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Greg and sat down across from him. They had served together for years and knew each other well enough that words were often unnecessary. You are thinking about the Torvin, Lisa said. It was not a question. 3 million dead, Greg replied. We could have done something, could we? Lisa asked. Really? We would have arrived too late. We would have walked into an unknown situation with unknown enemies. We might have lost ships, lost people, and still failed to save anyone. Sometimes the right choice is the one that hurts. When did you become the voice of reason? Greg asked with a slight smile. Someone has to be, since you insist on being the idealistic one, Lisa replied. Look, I get it. You want to save everyone. That is what makes you a good officer. But you need to understand that we cannot save everyone. We are 47 ships trying to protect hundreds of worlds. We need to be smart about how we use our resources. Greg nodded slowly. I do know that. It just feels like we are becoming what we set out to oppose. The Council does not help because it is not convenient. Now we are doing the same thing. No, Lisa said firmly. The Council does not help because they do not want to take risks. We are not helping the Torvin because we literally cannot be in two places at once. That is different. We need to build more ships, train more crews, expand our capabilities. Then we can help more people. But right now we need to focus on the commitments we can keep. They sat in silence for a while, drinking their coffee and thinking about the weight of decisions made far above their pay grade. Finally, Greg spoke again. Do you think we did the right thing at Velcara Prime? Yes, Lisa answered without hesitation. We saved millions of lives. We stopped an aggressive enemy. We showed the galaxy that peaceful species do not have to be victims. That was absolutely the right thing. Even though it led to this, to species calling us for help that we cannot provide. Lisa considered the question carefully. Yes, even though it led to this, because the alternative was worse. Part 6. 1 year had passed since Commander Jake Morrison had answered the desperate call from Velcara Prime. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways both profound and unexpected. Humanity had gone from an unknown species to a force that every civilization had to consider in their calculations. Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station above Velcara Prime and watched ships come and go. The station was now a hub of activity. 3 human battleships maintained permanent patrol around the system. Velcari merchant vessels traded with human cargo ships. And representatives from a dozen other species came and went, seeking meetings, negotiations, and alliances. Overseer Thane materialized beside him through a holographic projector. The Velcari leader looked tired but satisfied. His people had rebuilt their world and were thriving again under the protection of human forces. Good morning, Commander, Thane said. I wanted to inform you that the Mexari delegation has arrived. They wish to discuss expanding their defense agreement with Earth. Tell them I will meet with them this afternoon, Morrison replied. How are your people doing? Well, thanks to you. Our population has returned to pre-war levels. Trade is flourishing. We are even beginning to expand to the outer colonies again. Thane paused. We owe you everything, Commander. My people will never forget what humanity did for us. Morrison smiled slightly. We just did what needed to be done. Any decent species would have done the same. But they did not, Thane said quietly. Only you came. Only humans cared enough to risk their lives for strangers. It was true, Morrison reflected. In the year since Velcara Prime, humanity had responded to 8 more distress calls. They had saved 4 civilizations, arrived too late for 2 others, and made strategic decisions not to engage in 2 conflicts that would have overextended their forces. Each decision had been difficult. Each failure haunted them, but they kept trying. That was what mattered. Have you heard the latest news from the Galactic Council? Thane asked. Morrison shook his head. I try not to pay attention to council politics. What are they complaining about now? They are not complaining. They are copying you. That got Morrison's attention. What do you mean? Thane brought up a holographic display showing a news broadcast. Ambassador Kreth stood before the council chambers, announcing a new initiative. The council was creating a rapid response fleet, designed to answer distress calls quickly and decisively. They were calling it the Galactic Defense Force. Morrison watched the broadcast with interest. They are finally doing something useful, good for them. You do not seem upset that they are stealing your idea, Thane observed. Why would I be upset? The goal was never to replace the council. The goal was to protect innocent people. If they want to help with that, then great. The more the better. Morrison paused. Although I notice they are not mentioning that they got the idea from watching us. They would never admit that humanity taught them something, Thane said with amusement. But everyone knows the truth. You changed the galaxy, Commander. You showed us that we did not have to accept aggression and violence as inevitable. You proved that with courage and determination, the weak can be protected. Morrison felt uncomfortable with the praise. We are not heroes, Overseer. We are just doing our jobs. Heroes never think they are heroes, Thane replied. That is what makes them heroes. Later that day, Morrison met with the Mekshari delegation in the station's conference room. The Mekshari were an insectoid species with chitinous armor and multiple limbs. Their representative, a female named Zara, spoke with clicking mandibles that were translated by computer. Commander Morrison, my government wishes to expand our defense agreement with humanity. The pirate raids have stopped since your ships began patrolling our space. Our people feel safe for the first time in decades. I am glad we could help, Morrison replied. What kind of expansion are you considering? We would like a permanent human presence in our home system, a station like this one with ships and personnel. In exchange, we offer full access to our shipyards and manufacturing facilities. We want to help build more human ships. Morrison sat back, considering the offer. This was exactly what humanity needed. They were stretched thin trying to protect too many places with too few ships. If they could leverage the industrial capacity of allied species, they could expand much faster. I will need to take this to my superiors on Earth, Morrison said. But personally, I think it is an excellent idea. We need more ships, and you need protection. It is a fair trade. Zara's mandibles clicked, and what Morrison had learned was their equivalent of a smile. There is one more thing we would like to discuss. The Mekshari government has been in contact with several other species who are interested in forming a defensive alliance, not with the Galactic Council but with each other, with humanity as the military core. We are calling it the Mutual Protection League. Morrison leaned forward with interest. Tell me more. Over the next hour, Zara outlined the proposal. 8 species, all of whom had been ignored or inadequately protected by the Council, wanted to form their own alliance. They would pool resources, share technology, and provide for their common defense. Humanity would lead the military efforts, while the other species contributed in ways that suited their strengths. The Mekshari with manufacturing, the Plenari with scientific research, the Sulcan with agricultural supplies, and so on. It was ambitious. It was also exactly what the galaxy needed. I like it, Morrison said finally. But I need to be honest with you. Humanity cannot protect everyone. We have already had to make difficult choices about where to deploy our forces. Sometimes we arrive too late. Sometimes we cannot come at all. Any alliance we form needs to understand that. We understand, Zara replied. We are not looking for guarantees. We are looking for genuine effort. The Council promises everything and delivers nothing. Humanity promises nothing and delivers everything they can. That is enough for us. After the meeting, Morrison contacted Earth for a video conference with Admiral Murphy. When her face appeared on the screen, he could see she looked even more tired than the last time they had spoken. Admiral, I have a proposal that you need to hear, Morrison began. He spent the next 30 minutes explaining the Mutual Protection League concept. When he finished, Murphy sat in silence for a long moment. It is risky, she said finally. We would be committing to defend multiple species simultaneously. If several of them get attacked at once, we might not be able to respond to all of them. That is why we need the manufacturing deals, Morrison argued. We build more ships, train more crews, expand our capabilities. Within 5 years, we could have a fleet large enough to actually make a difference across multiple sectors. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we do what we can, the same as we are doing now, but with more support and resources. Murphy nodded slowly. The Council will see this as a direct challenge to their authority. They might even consider it an act of war. Let them, Morrison replied. We are not doing anything aggressive. We are just defending ourselves and our friends. If the Council has a problem with that, They can explain why they think peaceful species should not be allowed to protect themselves. Murphy smiled slightly. You are getting better at politics, Commander. All right, I will take this to the President and the Defense Committee, but I think they will approve. We need allies, and this is the best offer we are likely to get. The call ended, and Morrison returned to the observation deck. He stood there for a long time, watching the ships and thinking about the future. A year ago, humanity had been unknown in the galaxy. Now they were forming alliances, building stations, and changing the fundamental nature of galactic politics. It was exciting, it was terrifying, and it was absolutely necessary. The door opened behind him, and Captain Palmer entered. Greg had been promoted and was now commanding the battle group permanently stationed at Velcara Prime. I heard about the Mutual Protection League proposal, Greg said, coming to stand beside Morrison. What do you think the Council will do? Complain, mostly, Morrison replied. They might try some diplomatic pressure or economic sanctions, but they would not risk actual war. They know we would win. Are you sure about that? Morrison turned to look at him. About winning the war? Yes. The Council has thousands of ships, but they are designed for peacekeeping and police actions. We have combat vessels built by a species that spent thousands of years perfecting warfare. Ship for ship, we are better. And they know it. That is not what I am worried about, Greg said quietly. I am worried about what happens after. If we defeat the Council, we become the dominant power in this region. We become the Empire. How do we make sure we do not turn into the thing we are fighting against? It was a good question, one that Morrison had been thinking about a lot lately. We remember why we started this. We did not answer the Velcari distress call because we wanted power. We did it because it was the right thing to do. As long as we keep that in mind, as long as we measure our success by how many people we save, rather than how much territory we control, we will stay on the right path. I hope you're right, Greg said. So do I, Morrison admitted. They stood together in silence, watching the galaxy turn below them. Somewhere out there, another species was probably calling for help right now.